Hey, KU fans, welcome back to KU Sports Extra. Boy, do we have a lot of extra stuff to talk about. But I want to change this up. I want to do something. Didn't tell you about it. I know you're nervous, but I want to try something.
Yeah.
I want you to be me and give them the good news, and I'm going to be you and give the bad news. See,
okay.
We're not just going to switch roles. You're actually going to be me and tell them the good news, and I'm going to be you and tell them the bad news. And then we'll get into life.
Okay. The good news is that Kansas is 18-4. The good news is that Kansas is undefeated in Allen Fieldhouse. The good news is the sky is not falling. I know they won by 18 points, but believe it or not, the sky's not falling.
That's not bad. No
That's
Broncos
the good news.
Talk, nothing?
I'll tell you some
You're
more good
supposed
news.
to be me.
I'll tell you some more good news. The recruiting class for football was necessary. It wasn't sexy, nothing sexy about it, but it was necessary. They broke the JUCO cycle, particularly at offensive line, where it needed to be broken the most.
No doubt about it. I like that. That's very good news, and I think all of that's good news.
And what's the bad news?
The bad news is we got to wait 5 years, roughly 5 years, for there to be another meaningful Neil Young birthday. For another countdown to be unleashed.
The top 75.
Right. 72 doesn't do it for anybody. We got to wait 5 years, and that's hard. If I'm you, that's bad news.
It's tough.
If I'm not, and I'm Kansas, or I'm you and I'm talking about Kansas, I think the bad news is KU looks like an awfully flawed basketball team right now, and they have for the last couple of weeks, but they kind of got right here and they kind of got right there. But that victory over K-State was ugly, it was unimpressive, and it had a lot more to do, in my opinion, with the way K-State played and the things that K-State didn't do to
because
compete.
they were playing without Stokes,
Yeah.
the talented freshman guard. They have a real shortage of ball handling. They can't take care of the ball, and Kansas exploited that.
Yeah, there's no doubt. So this Kansas team continues to look sluggish at times. They continue to
flawed. You said
flawed
it.
is the perfect word, and they're running out of time to get things taken care of and get things fixed. Really, there's a lot they need to fix, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. But we're going to spend most of this extra talking about the signing class and also this Brannen Greene dunk that I keep hearing about that I didn't actually see until
I didn't either because I was packing up and
right,
then
writing down 75, 59.
I had the wrong score in my head. And I thought, well, wait a minute.
Weird. That happened to a lot of people. Which do you want to start with, the signing class or Brannen Greene?
Let's start with Brannen Greene.
I like it. Go.
Okay.
No,
here's
obviously.
the deal.
Yeah, go ahead.
The deal is Brannen Greene dunks with 1 second left, turning a 16-point game into an 18-point, turning his point total, perhaps more importantly to Brannen Greene, from 6 to 8 in 6 minutes. 3 for 3, 1 for 1, 1 for 1, no turnovers. The most imperfect perfect game in basketball history. And it's not really about whether I think it's a big deal, you think it's a big deal, Benton Smith thinks it's a big deal. It only matters one person. The guy who controls Brannen Greene's playing time thinks it's a big deal. Brannen Greene certainly knows that.
Right.
And he did it anyway. He basically posterized his coach.
It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And now, I didn't see it live, but I've watched it on replay a bunch of times, and you go back and
Great
watch
photo
it.
Nick Krug has
Great
of it that
photo.
ran with your blog, which
Yeah.
I'd recommend anyone reading Matt's blog. Tell the tape.
I talked to Nick about it, and I said, I'm really glad you got that photo because it's Greene coming down after the dunk, and he's got this just cocky smile.
And he
on
said
his
he's
face.
looking at the bench.
Yeah. It was a very cool thing. That Nick, that's just another example of what great work Nick does because he could have easily packed up his gear. The game was over,
Right.
but he said, I saw Brannen get the ball, and I thought, this guy's going to do something. And he did. It was the dunk, heard around the world. It's a national story all of a sudden, not just the dunk, but also Self's reaction to it. It's kind of a mixed bag. Half the people think he overreacted and was wrong in calling Greene out. The other half think, good for you. We don't do that. We're Kansas. And like you said, it doesn't really matter which side of the fence you fall on. It's a very interesting story either way. My personal take, I think Bill Self was absolutely justified because this is a guy that continues to be a pain in his butt and he probably should have just gotten rid of him and parted ways a year, 2 years ago even. He hasn't, and now he's got to deal with it again. And I think he's tired of it. That was very clear. And so, yeah, he has every right to say that was. And
it makes me wonder if Brannen Greene has taken Svi under his wing. You see him walking together to games and stuff sometimes, to try to keep him one step behind him. Because I think what put Brannen Greene in a bad mood possibly is that Svi had the game of his career.
Yeah.
And Svi and Brannen Greene play the same role. So if Svi plays a lot of minutes, there aren't many minutes left over for Brannen Greene. Maybe
that's
Svi
possible.
Should start following Perry Ellis.
Yeah, that's very possible. It's just so confusing. This is a guy that isn't playing very many minutes. And minutes for Greene are hard to come by. Everybody can see that. Everybody knows that. He knows that. So why in the world, if you want to play more, which he does,
that's the mystery.
Why in the world would you do something?
Why do you think that posterizing your coach is the way to get more playing time? It's so bizarre. This guy's brain he's a very smart guy, but he does some very, very stupid things. I mean, this was just not smart. It wasn't self-serving.
Right, not at all. And I think he'll pay for it, whether he's actually suspended for Saturday's game
or just has to rot on the bench and watch.
Sits. Yeah, either way, he's going to pay for it. And I think that the idea that this is a cumulative effect. I mean, it's the umpteenth time that he's pushed Self's buttons, for lack of a better word. If this had been any other player, Wayne Selden, Jamari Traylor, whoever, I don't think Self would have reacted the same way. I don't think he would have liked it. I think there would have been something said, but I don't think he would have maybe called the guy out publicly. But it's a Brannen Greene issue and not a Bill Self issue. And the coach, could he have done it differently? Absolutely he could have. But can he do whatever he wants? You bet.
Yeah, and he's controlling the playing time.
Right.
Bottom line.
Right. Yeah. So a weird deal.
I love watching Greene play.
He's
got a beautiful shot.
He's been one of our favorite guys to interview because he just speaks his mind. It's very genuine.
And he's not a bad rebounder.
No. Also
and a great shooter.
Yeah. So a weird deal all the way around. Who knows what the future holds for him in terms of minutes this year, the rest of the way. Bottom line is there's still a very real possibility that there will be a game or a handful of games where KU's going to need him.
Oh, no question.
And that's what eats itself the most.
Yes.
Because if he was a guy that he didn't think he needed, he'd be long gone. But this is a guy that Bill Self realizes can be an absolute weapon from the outside, and he may need him. So he's got to put up with him, and he hates that.
And here's a game where Self will use the bench a lot against TCU.
Sure.
Things go as we expect them to go, which is Kansas winning, and maybe winning by a lot. Then Brannen Greene would have great opportunity to play. Maybe even you'd have the lineup. I'd love to see for just 1 4-minute stretch between, TV timeouts, where Self puts 5 guys out there and says, you're going to play through your mistakes no matter what you do. You're going to stay on the floor for 4 minutes, and we'll compare the score from when that 4 minutes started to when it ended, and just go with this offensive lineup. Devontae Graham, Svi, Brannen Greene, Carlton Bragg, and Perry Ellis. I'm not talking about starting lineup. I'm talking about I want to see that from one TV timeout to the next where they all are allowed to play through the mistakes and see what would happen. The other team would kind of be freaking out because every one of those guys can shoot from the perimeter, and that's decent size, that lineup as well.
Yeah, it would be a wide-open style of offense. There would be good ball movement, I think. I think it'd be really cool to watch. And it gets down to another point that we need to talk about with this team, and that's what the heck's going on with Frank Mason. He's not in that group you just mentioned, and he doesn't belong in that group because he's playing horribly right now.
Well, when he drives to the hoop, it used to be he'd get fouled. I think that the word is out. Teams don't foul him.
That's a good point.
Try to keep him, guard him honestly, but let him see what he can come up with at the end of those wild drives.
Most of the time it's something desperate.
Yeah, it's a desperate shot. It's a desperate pass.
And he always gets knocked down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not helping him either because he's already banged up. He has been.
Yeah, he has not been playing well.
So,
and, you saw the blood on his right knee.
Right.
Who knows what that's from, but
right.
And he also was stretching his knee kicking
it clearly
back.
bothering him.
Yeah, his knee is bothering him, so we don't want to be too tough on a guy who we think is injured, but blood and stretching a knee just seem like two separate deals. I don't know what was happening there.
No, he's got multiple issues right now, I think.
Yeah.
Elbow, knee.
Right.
I'm sure.
Because he's up there in the air and then flies. He does a lot of these crash and burns.
Yeah, it's weird. And I think one of their best stretches in that K-State victory was when he was on the bench. And it wasn't quite the lineup that you said just now, but close to that. And they looked a lot better. They moved the ball. I get it. You got to play Mason. You want to play Mason. But, it might not be a bad idea to start playing him less and less, both to get him healthy and also to see what these other lineups can do. So
But you can't do that if Brannen Greene is going to be disciplined.
Good point.
And if Self wants to leave him on a bench the whole game, hey, that's his prerogative. And, if Greene did this to try to show up Self, why wouldn't Self dock him for a game?
Absolutely. At least one. So, all right, well, that's all the KU hoops talk for now. We're going to move to football because it was National Signing Day on Wednesday. And as Tom mentioned, it was a good class. There's nothing great about it yet. We got to see these guys pan out, so we don't know. But
necessary class.
Necessary.
I wouldn't even put.
There's enough there that makes you think, okay, they did some decent things here. And what's the biggest thing that jumps out to you? Obviously, it's a class of 17, and if you guys have read anything in the last couple of months, you know that the reason it's 17 and not 25 is because they had 8 guys that joined the 2015 roster that had to count forward. So that brings it down 8 this year.
Beaty called it the 19, meaning Durley and Allende. He was counting them, which kind of...
They're part of the 17.
Oh, they are part of the 17.
The others he was counting were the quarterback from Texas, Dagan Hahn, the receiver, Keegan Brewer, no relation.
Right.
And then actually there's an offensive lineman too, this Lucas Jacobs from West Virginia. So those guys are walk-ons that they announced. Kind of an interesting deal. Preferred walk-ons, I guess, is what you call them. But they're not scholarship guys. So the scholarship number is just 17, and that's the reason why. So it's a little light, but they did address a lot of needs, and I think that's where you start with regard to did they do well or did they not?
Well, to me, they had to break the JUCO cycle. They did that. They only got 2.5 JUCOs, a half being a guy who has 3 years eligibility left. And they had to do it adding the offensive line. The only way to develop an offensive line is to recruit a bunch of big high school kids with big frames, put the weight on them, teach them the technique, and 2 or 3 years down the road, a couple of them will develop into starters.
Right, not all of them,
class.
But a couple.
And we don't know who yet. The coaches don't even know who yet. But it looked like a couple of them had good speed, good feet, and that's a good place to start. And they're big frames. Like the 2 from last year, McCauley and Hughes were big guys, and they're putting weight on. McCauley's already put on 40 pounds.
Yeah, that's significant.
Going from 260 to 300.
Very significant.
And when you're big and long, you can put on that weight. There's places to put it. So that's the main thing. Still, this roster is short in a couple areas. I think running back, that's a bit of a scary shortage right now because in today's world where they do a lot better job of detecting concussions, running back seems to be the position that has about the most of them. Running back and linebacker seem to be. And so you're going to have guys going down with concussions and going to have to say next man up. They don't have that many next men to put up.
Right, yeah. They lost Taylor Cox and they lost DeAndre Mann from last year.
Got one high school player from the
Khalil Herbert
from
Florida. Yeah,
Juice. I don't know if it's a great nickname for a running back.
Dangerous.
I used to like it when he ran behind the electric company, but then, when an electric chair came into the equation, I didn't like it as much.
Fair enough. Well, I think one of the other things that's interesting about this class is you look at some of the guys. There's a handful of guys in this group that the only reason KU got them is because they got injured. And let's face it, that's kind of where KU's at right now. When you're rebuilding, when you're in the position where you've got to hope to find those gems that are kind of hidden from everybody else or the guys that no one else wants, you got to take a couple of risks. And there was one at offensive line that did that. This quarterback, the walk-on Dagan Hahn, is a guy that is exactly that same thing.
Twice.
Right.
He had
2 injuries
2 years in a row. He's 2015 comeback player of the year, and then he gets injured in his last game. So maybe he'll have a chance to be the 2016 comeback player of the year.
No doubt, yeah. But I think a couple of those guys probably were headed elsewhere if they didn't get injured, and KU would have never had a shot at him anyway. Now they do, And I think you flip a coin. I think you roll the dice and you say, hey, we'll take our chance on this guy because
right.
if he does come all the way back, we got a heck of a player. If he doesn't, nothing's
going to redshirt him anyway.
Right.
Every one of those guys who's hurt, redshirt him and see if you can, while rehabbing, build the rest of the body as well. So
right.
I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah, so I like that about the group because it's guys that would have been, quality options for other programs, legit established programs. And then the other thing, which I wrote for Thursday's paper, that I really liked was the fact that a lot of these guys, whether they were injured or not, were guys that were getting interest from other programs that seemed to be legitimate programs. And Beaty had no problem calling that out a little bit. One of the guys, Antoine Frazier, an offensive lineman, was
right.
contacted by Baylor late. He stuck with KU.
Yeah, that's impressive. And that's one of the linemen with really good-looking feet. He ran down
that was impressive.
A skilled player. So
if you haven't seen it, I've got a blog up from signing day that's got all their highlights. There's a nice clip of Frazier running down a guy after a fumble. He's an offensive lineman. The ball gets by the quarterback, and he chases this linebacker down.
Right.
Or something.
And what did Beaty say about his mom's arms? That they're bigger than
most of the guys on the team.
Yeah.
And then he did this and said she's jacked up.
Jacked up.
So he didn't sign her, though.
No,
they were out. They only have 17 scholarships. But yeah, then another guy, Ian Peterson, a defensive back, safety type of guy. Beaty said flat out that they had multiple big schools calling him when the kid was en route on his visit to Kansas. So good news there. It doesn't tell you that these guys are going to be stars. Yeah, have fun. Have a nice trip. It doesn't mean these guys are going to be stars or even pan out, but I do think it shows that KU's getting closer to being in on the right types of guys. And I agree with you 100% that the JUCO thing, it's really nice to see that kind of go by the wayside for a while.
See, I think one misconception is the key to having a good recruiter is you're a good salesman. I think in football, particularly where Kansas is at the very bottom of the conference, a development program, I don't think the key is salesmanship because you can't out-talk 0-12. You can't out-talk the lack of tradition. You can't have you don't have a natural answer to, well, they pay their basketball coach 6 times as much as they pay their football coach. What does that tell you about the emphasis they put on football compared to basketball? You have no answer for any of that stuff. So the key to being a good recruiter for Kansas when you are where Kansas is you are a talented evaluator.
Right.
You can pick the right piece of clay. You can see the right potential, and you can know that this guy we can mold into a good player. That guy's as good as he's ever going to get. That guy will never work hard. I can tell because I talked to his third cousin's ex-girlfriend, and she told me an anecdote. So it's evaluation. It's not salesmanship.
Agree. Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that's the development is the key with these guys. And any one of these coaches will tell you that. Beaty said that himself. We're getting the right guys. We're getting closer to that. The bottom line now, can we develop them? And that's how it should be. It should be on the coaching staff. And if they do, KU starts taking steps forward. If they don't, these guys are gone too, and it's in with the next crew. So it'll be real interesting. Real quick, let's just wrap up the signing day coverage. You got a favorite player in this class, whether it's someone you just liked his film or a name? I mean, you already talked about Juice and the electric chair. We'll just let that one kind of float out there. But anybody that you think that will be, an impact guy or somebody you're going to really enjoy covering and getting to learn about?
Well, it sounds like Mekhi Long, the linebacker who played quarterback as well in high school. He's 240 pounds or so. Sounds like he's a legitimate force at linebacker and could play a lot right off the bat.
Yeah. He was the top-rated recruit in the class. So a guy that had a bunch of offers from a bunch of legit places.
And that defensive end looks good. Who's 210 pounds?
Isaiah Bean. Yeah, that's another guy that.
Bit of a string bean now, but once they put some pounds on him.
Yeah. He'll add 20, 30 pounds before it's all said and done very easily. And as long as he keeps his explosiveness, explosivity, whatever it is. Yeah. As long as he keeps playing like Brannen Greene, playing like the explosive athlete that he can be, he'll be a really nice option there. I really like Kyle Mayberry too, the defensive back from Oklahoma. I wrote about him earlier this week when he first met Chris Harris, who's also from the same area. Harris was doing a camp in Tulsa for high school kids, and they got on the same elevator, and Harris introduced himself and then asked, "Who are you?" And Mayberry said, "I'm the best cornerback in Oklahoma." And I don't think he was cocky. I think he just, he believed it. And Harris loved him from that moment on. They have a lot in common. They're both from the same area, and Mayberry's got a chance to be a really good player, and he'll probably be another one that factors in right away. So I gave it a C+. I probably would have given it a little bit of a higher grade if they could fill 25 guys. I think there are a lot of guys that have some good potential here. Again, they just have to be developed. I think you agree right around C+ is the right grade, don't you?
Yeah, that was a perfect grade, I thought. The plus being they addressed the JUCO cycle and broke it.
Yeah, and the proper needs. They found O-linemen. They found secondary help.
Yeah, but that running back scares me. That does scare me.
Yeah.
Maybe Tornaden, the safety from Free State High School right here in Lawrence. Maybe if you're desperate and you need a running back, maybe you take him from the defense and play him at running back.
Sure.
Tevin Shaw was a superstar in high school. A little late to be moving him around.
Yeah.
But if need be, I bet you he could do okay at running back.
Be very interesting.
Maybe Starks? I don't know. 6'2", is that
Cozart, we should mention Cozart. You asked if he's moved yet.
Right, and David Beaty said they haven't moved any players yet.
Right.
So,
were you disappointed in hearing that?
No, because it's early.
Right.
And maybe even if they've had those internal discussions, he's certainly not going to share those with us,
right?
Nor should he, before sharing them with the players.
Yeah, and there's a lot of quarterbacks there. I think it's very possible that with Carter Stanley and Ryan Willis and Tyreek Starks and Dagan Hahn and DeAndre Ford.
Dagan Hahn's coming off his second consecutive year of an ACL, so maybe this will be a red
It should be. It absolutely should be. But even still, with that group sort of crowded like it is, if Montel maybe can see it and make it his own idea, well, these guys are developing and they're getting reps ahead of me. And
Beatty did say if there's someone who can help on the field, he's not going to be standing next to me.
Right.
So that's kind of a way of saying he has an open mind to a switch. And you wonder what the switch would be for Montel. Would it be safety, where they're a little thin? If you look down the road, their safeties are going to be seniors this year,
right?
The key guys. And so would it be safety? Would it be wide receiver, where they appear to be a little more stocked?
Right.
Would it be running back even?
That's an interesting one for sure, because the kid can run. There's no doubt about it.
I would say in order to probably be receiver, safety, running back.
Totally agree. Good stuff. And Beatty was, good. He was energetic. He was excited.
Oh, yeah. He's in his element talking about young talent.
Yeah. He didn't talk a lot about all of his best friends in Texas. He talked a lot about families this year.
Yeah, that was his theme this year.
Yeah.
Last year was his best friends who were the high school coaches.
Every single one.
Good place to be. And here's another thing we should talk about. They only had one scholarship go to a Kansas high school football player.
Right.
They were turned down by a number of Kansas high school football players and scholarship offers. Most notably, Amani Bledsoe from right here at Lawrence High. Yeah. They really did everything they could to get him. He decided to go to Oklahoma. The thing is, that doesn't mean that they have failed in Kansas.
Totally agree.
It's too early to say that. They have gone to every little school in the state.
Some that didn't even have football, we learned.
Yes,
yeah,
and
that was
trying
awesome.
trying to plant seeds. And it takes a while for those seeds to take root. K-State has been doing this forever. You're not going to flip that in a year.
No, they had to repair some damage that was done by the previous two coaching
staffs. And that's a process.
And they did do that. I mean, their relationships with the high schools and the coaches and the programs throughout the state seem to be certainly on the rise and improving. And they're being taken seriously now when they are interested in a kid at any one of these Kansas high schools. So, yeah, no reason to panic, no cause to sound the alarms at all. It's good they got the one kid. Next year, if they could do 2, 3, 4 of those guys, then you're heading in the right direction.
It'd be interesting also to track the careers of Isaiah Bean, the defensive end, and Amani Bledsoe, the defensive end that went to Oklahoma, and see who ends up playing more earlier and see who ends up having a bigger impact as a Big 12 football player. My guess would be Amani Bledsoe. That's why
smart money
Oklahoma
is there.
Wanted him. But
no
we'll
doubt.
see.
Yeah,
you never know. Football is that inexact a science when you're talking about projecting high school kids to college.
And football's crazy, especially Oklahoma has proven this. You never know. Down the road, Amani Bledsoe could be a right tackle on offense trying to block Isaiah Bean as a defensive end.
And wouldn't that be a story?
Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be,
sign me up right now for that. I'll start writing it tonight.
That would be like if Bill Self were a defensive end and Brannen Greene were a right tackle.
Who would win that?
Yeah.
All right, let's finish it off. Perfect segue. Most obnoxious man in sports this week. Any idea? Did you come up with one?
I'm going to go with Brannen Greene. And not to pile on, but
right.
I like watching the kid play, and I wish he would get out of his own way.
Obnoxious.
Yeah.
We don't even have to go further than that. It was just obnoxious.
You don't want to win an award named after Johnny Manziel.
No, and I almost went with him again, but we can't. So I'm going to go with a group of people, and it's sort of a preemptive strike because I'm already upset about it, and I hope I'm proven wrong.
The Beatles?
No. Do like the Beatles, though. Good guess. It's the Pro Football Hall of Fame voters, because I'm afraid they might not put Terrell Davis in the Hall of Fame this weekend. And I think that's totally ridiculous. I think Terrell Davis belongs in the Hall of Fame. He's a finalist, and I hope he gets in.
I'll give you one more who belongs.
Who?
And I hope Terrell Davis gets in.
That's lovely. I like to hear that. Who?
John Hadle.
There you go.
When John Hadle retired, he was third on the all-time list in passing yards. Third.
That's incredible.
Come on. Give me a break.
Yeah.
That means he was one of the three most prolific passers in that statistic, which is a pretty darn important one.
For that position, yeah.
Yeah. And that position's an important one. Come on. Look at Kansas when they had Reesing and when they don't have Reesing. There are other reasons, but yeah, that's look at the way that guy elevated the program.
No doubt.
John Hadle elevated the Chargers and then the Rams, and because he was lousy with the Packers, he doesn't get in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah. All right, I'll take it. Obnoxious Hall of Fame voters, generation after generation. I hope my guy TD gets in. If he doesn't, I'm prepared already. You can see. I'm ready to handle it. I got something to do Sunday anyway that might help. Who you pick? Broncos, Panthers?
My heart says Broncos. My head says Panthers, so I'll go with my head.
Smart move.
It's a big head. It's bigger than my heart.
Smart move. Your heart because of Harris and Talib, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's cool.
I loved covering them, and both good guys in their own way.
In their own way.
Harris is a great guy. Talib is a fascinating guy.
Perfect.
Let's just say that. And they both work very hard at their craft. Talib works very hard, puts in a lot of physical and mental preparation. So does Harris. And two terrific players.
It's really cool that they're. I mean, I'm obviously a Bronco fan, but even if they were playing for the Chargers or whatever, it's very cool to see them still playing together.
Well, yeah. Why? And what is the key word in them playing together? Think about it. What will they be remembered for most in college? And it has a meaning in the NFL as well, where they ended up together. One word: orange.
Oh my God.
The Orange Bowl.
And the Orange Broncos. I see how that works now. Beautiful.
And then the picture of Mark Mangino next to the orange where they make all the coaches.
This is just getting better by the second. We should just keep going. Never mind. You're off the hook. Thanks for watching KU Sports Extra. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Enjoy KU TCU. Enjoy the Hall of Fame voting. And we'll be back next week for a big week for KU basketball. West Virginia at home and then at Oklahoma. That could make or break the season. We'll talk to you guys next time.